They called me trash. Not metaphorically. My father literally screamed, "You're uneducated garbage, get out." And my mother, she just stood there and nodded. My name is Avery Blake. I didn't drop out of college because I was lazy. I left because I saw something no one else did, my own potential. But they never saw it, not once. Let me ask you this. Have you ever been rejected by your own family? Not because you hurt them, but because you dared to dream in a direction they didn't approve of? This story isn't just about money. It's not about success. It's about what happens when the people who raised you become the ones who try to break you, and what happens when you choose to rise anyway, not to prove them wrong, but to prove yourself right. So if you've ever felt invisible, disposable, or like your worth was measured by a diploma or job title, stay with me. Because sometimes the best revenge is building the kind of life they can't even get near. And I did exactly that. My father's voice didn't just rise that night, it exploded. Veins bulging, hands shaking, spit flying from his mouth as he pointed at the front door like it was some kind of execution chamber. "You're uneducated trash," he screamed. "Get out. You don't belong here anymore." And my mother? She didn't say a word. She stood behind him, arms crossed, eyes cold. Then, she nodded. Not a single ounce of hesitation. Like they had rehearsed it. It was supposed to be a simple dinner. I was home for a rare visit thinking maybe, just maybe, I could share a little about my life. The projects I'd been building, the startups I'd invested in, the algorithm I was refining. But they didn't care. "You dropped out of college," my dad spat. "You sit in cafes like a scammer with a laptop." "You're pretending," my mom added. "You'll come crawling back, like always." I remember looking around the dining room, the one I helped remodel with money they never asked where it came from. The chairs I'd bought, the lights I'd installed, none of it mattered now, because I wasn't their daughter anymore. I was an embarrassment. They thought they were breaking me, crushing me. What they didn't realize was that moment was the exact second I became free. I stood up, slid my chair in, picked up my purse and car keys, and I said one word. Not a scream, not a plea, just, okay. But it wasn't a weak okay. It wasn't the okay of someone who gives up. It was the okay of someone who sees clearly, finally, because in that moment I saw them, really saw them, not as parents, but as two people who only valued me when I fit their mold. And now that I didn't, they'd rather call me trash than admit they didn't understand me. I didn't cry, not then, not even in the car. Because somewhere deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning. What they didn't know was that hours earlier, I had closed a $9.2 million deal, that I held majority equity in a fintech platform now valued over $200 million, that the so-called trash they kicked out was the architect of something they couldn't even comprehend. I didn't leave with shame. I left with clarity. That night, as I drove away from the only home I had ever known, I didn't look back, not even once. Because when someone finally shows you what they truly think of you, believe them, and move forward. 3 weeks. That's how long it took before the calls started. Blocked numbers, voicemails filled with panic. My mother's voice trembling. "Avery, sweetheart, please call us, it's urgent." I didn't answer, not because I was angry, but because I didn't owe them anything anymore. The same people who called me trash were now drowning. Turns out, their golden retirement plan? A Ponzi scheme. Their accounts? Frozen. Their house? Inches from foreclosure. And me? I was waking up to the sound of waves crashing outside my Malibu estate, drinking espresso brewed by my personal chef, reviewing investor interest from a Dubai-based private equity firm. They had no idea the life I had built, because they never asked, they never cared, and then they showed up, unannounced. I had just come back from yoga when my security desk buzzed. "Ma'am, there's an older couple downstairs claiming to be your parents." I paused, then smiled. "Please inform them I'm unavailable, and remind them this building doesn't allow unapproved guests." 10 minutes later, I watched the security footage, my father pacing, my mother wiping away tears. They looked so small, not because they were poor, but because they finally realized how far they'd thrown me, and how high I'd climbed without them. Back then, they mocked me for working in cafes, called my laptop a toy, told relatives I was playing startup, living off scraps. What I was actually doing was coding a financial algorithm that now powers one of the fastest growing credit unions in the Southeast. What I was actually doing was becoming the storm they never saw coming. They thought I was still that girl sitting on their couch, desperate for validation. But she no longer existed. In her place now stood a woman with vision, power, and peace. And peace doesn't answer uninvited knocks, especially not from people who slammed the door first. Later that evening, I received a text from my father. "We're struggling. We need your help. Just a small loan until things stabilize." I read it once, then again, and replied with only 3 words. I thought I was trash. Delivered, read, no reply. Because when someone throws you away like garbage, they don't get to ask for gold 3 weeks later. I wasn't being cruel, I was being clear. They taught me that. They taught me how easy it was to discard someone just because they didn't fit your vision. Now I was simply returning the favor, with silence. The article dropped on a Thursday. From college dropout to fintech queen, Avery Blake's $45 million empire. Front cover, full spread. Me, barefoot, standing on the balcony of my Malibu estate, hair windswept, coffee mug in hand. The words self-funded printed across the ceramic in bold black letters. By noon, my inbox was overflowing. Old classmates, former bosses, 2 exes. Suddenly everyone remembered me, and so did my family. My sister sent me a screenshot of the group chat. "Mom, she's embarrassing us publicly." "Dad, she's doing this for attention. She's always been a performer." There it was. Even now, after all the world had seen, after every headline, they still couldn't say the one word I never begged for, but always hoped for: proud. Instead, they saw my success as a threat, not to their reputation, but to the story they told themselves, that I was the failure, the mistake, the one who didn't follow the rules, and should have suffered for it. Later that night, my phone rang. My sister. We hadn't spoken since she mocked me at Thanksgiving for chasing internet money. This time her voice was softer, quieter. "Avery," she said, "they're not okay. Dad's had 2 panic attacks. Mom's not eating. They know they went too far." I stayed silent. Then I asked just one question. If they hadn't lost everything, would they have called? There was a long pause. Then, in a whisper, "No, I don't think they would have." We both knew it. They didn't miss me. They missed what I could give them. The version of me who showed up with flowers after being told she was a disappointment. The version who stayed quiet, stayed small, stayed available. But that girl, she's gone. So, I wrote an email. Direct, polite, final. "Dear Mom and Dad, I'm sorry for your situation. Truly. But this is the life you told me I didn't deserve. The same one you ridiculed me for building. I won't fund comfort for those who chose cruelty when kindness cost them nothing. I forgive you. But forgiveness does not include access. Avery." No signature, no warmth, just closure. Because forgiveness isn't about letting people back in. It's about letting yourself move forward, without the weight of what they did. And I was done carrying it. They had their chance. They used it to call me trash. Now I was offering them the one thing they never gave me: peace, but only from a distance. The sun was setting over the Pacific as I poured champagne into 10 glasses. No cameras, no press, just 10 people who never once asked me to shrink. Investors who took a chance when all I had was a deck and a dream. Friends who stayed when my own family slammed doors. People who didn't see me as the dropout or the rebel, but simply as Avery. We toasted that night, to building something real, to outgrowing rooms we were never meant to stay in, to surviving the quiet, heavy guilt so many daughters carry when they succeed without permission. Later, as the candles melted low and laughter softened, someone leaned in and asked, "Avery, do you think you'll ever forgive your family?" I didn't hesitate. "I already have," I said, "but forgiveness doesn't mean access." Everyone nodded, because they understood. Forgiveness is something you give yourself, not an invitation for others to come back and hurt you again. 2 days later, a letter arrived, no return address. But I knew the handwriting immediately. My mother's curvy, careful, always too big, like she wanted her words to take up more space than they deserved. It started with, "We made mistakes. We just wanted better for you," and spiraled into soft guilt traps. "We were scared. We didn't understand your choices. You used to need us. We weren't ready to need you." And finally, the real reason for the letter. "We'd love to visit the beach house sometime." Of course. It was never really about reconciliation. It was about proximity, to the life they said I'd never build, to the success they once mocked, to the version of me they never believed in. There was no apology, no ownership, no mention of the night they told me to get out, no reckoning for the years of silence and shame. I folded the letter once, then twice, dropped it into the shredder without a second thought. Not because I was angry, but because I was done. They had every chance to be part of this chapter. They chose not to. Now they don't get to tour the palace I built from the ashes of their rejection. I don't need their seat at the table, because I've built my own hall, wide, open, full of light, and only welcoming to those who clapped for me before the spotlight ever arrived. It's been 6 months, no calls, no letters, no voicemails begging for forgiveness, just silence. And that silence, it doesn't sting anymore, it sings. Because I no longer need to be chosen by people who couldn't even recognize me. I've stopped chasing their version of love, the kind that only shows up when you're obedient, small, grateful to sit quietly at the edge of their table. I've built something bigger. Today, I'm not just a founder, I'm an investor. I've launched 2 new companies. I've backed 5 startups led by women who were told they were too much or not enough. I've created a scholarship fund for girls like me, brilliant, overlooked, uninvited to the table. And I don't wake up to criticism. I wake up to waves, to light, to space, the kind of space they tried to shrink me out of. I don't feel bitterness when I think of them, just distance and peace. Because now I finally understand. They didn't break me. They freed me. They didn't burn my life down. They gave me the match. All those years they doubted me, pushed me out, called me names. That wasn't the end of my story. It was the start of a new one. One where I'm not begging to be let in. I'm designing the whole damn building. People sometimes ask me if I regret cutting them off, if I ever feel lonely. Here's what I say. Loneliness is sitting at a table where your voice doesn't matter. Peace is waking up in a home you built with your own hands, where every corner whispers, "You did this." So no, I don't regret leaving. They thought they were breaking me, but what they really did was set me free. And if they ever drive by this house, this quiet palace of soft light and louder legacy, they'll know. They'll know that the daughter they once dismissed as trash turned out to be the architect of everything they needed and everything they'll never have again. I don't need a seat at their table, because I've built a hall of my own, with tall ceilings, glass walls, and wide-open doors, but only for those who saw me before the glow-up. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who teach you how to survive without them. They may doubt you, dismiss you, even try to break you, but your value has never depended on their approval. You don't owe anyone access to the life they tried to keep you from. Your peace is sacred, your success is yours. And your story? You get to rewrite it. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or silenced, know this, you're not alone, and you're more powerful than you've been told. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real stories of strength, healing, and quiet revenge. Because sometimes, the best endings start with one quiet okay.